Your back hurt. As always, it's such terrible nights in the digital circus. Your mattress was just way too soft. It honestly felt like you were sinking butt first into quicksand. Worst of all, the others didn't seem to have that problem. According to Ragatha, another character in the digital world, everyone's room was custom made, so every one of them had a different mattress, blankets, and even bed frames. And of course, what other stuff was in there as well. But you really only cared about the bed. You sighed, walking outside your room. Your days spent in the digital circus were all in an attempt to keep up a schedule. Schedules were grounding and gave someone the smallest of control over what was happening to them. Even though the digital circus did its best to subdue the creation of natural schedules. For one, no one felt hunger or thirst. You didn't get tired and sleep was dreamless. Your bodies didn't develop an odor and remained neutral. Which sure sounded nice on paper, really. It just really didn't help with schedule creation and upkeep. You slumped through the large hallway of the living quarters, running into the other characters who too had just awoken. All things considered, they seemed chipper. Yesterday's adventure had been a fluke. That's what Kane called adventures that sounded good on paper, but not in execution. It had been simple. A cake baking contest made harder by adding a few disruptive NPCs into the mix. No, not the cake mix, but the kitchen. You were the lucky one who was on the team with the two characters who didn't care about putting a good show in the slightest, Zubel and Jax. So instead of bothering to make a big cake, the three of you just relaxed. Which was disturbingly easy. It seemed as if the NPCs sent to disrupt were only after whatever was being made. So while the others had to deal with even more disruptive creatures, you got nothing. And in the end, all that you delivered was a bowl filled with vanilla sauce that you got by simply opening up a package in the kitchen, with some chocolate chips added on top. Of course, the others hated your team for being lazy, not realizing that it didn't matter how much effort was put into the dishes. Kane just needed to like it in the end. And well, as simple and lazy as your dessert was, he still liked it, netting everyone a win. The shit-eating grin Jax had the entire evening as he stared at the other team was priceless too. Especially Ragatha and Pomni were upset, as they managed to create a full cheesecake with frosting while fighting off a large group of gloinks. God, that was just a cherry on top. You stepped next to Jax at the stage area as the theme song was finished, and Kane floated above everyone, seemingly lazy, lying on his back. As he chuckled. What's so funny, Kane? Asked Pomni cautiously. Oh, Pomni, it's just this adventure I've planned. It's one of my best yet. Oh God, I already have enough of it. Zubel was done with everything. We're going to die, cried Gangle. The adventure is called... Kane made a dramatic twirl in the air before the letters Mimic Power Hour appeared behind him. Mimic Power Hour? What? Are we opening boxes until one of them bites back? Joked Jax. That's actually a pretty good idea, Jax. God damn it. But now, drumroll please, Bubble. I said drumroll, Bubble. Sorry, boss, no hands, you know that. Kane scratched his chin. Well, I guess, just imagine a drum roll then. Clearing his throat, he pointed at the stage curtains, which now opened, revealing... Pomni screamed, while Jax started gagging. A gross black blob, seemingly made of tar, in a half-humanoid shape emerging out of a bigger splotch. It was covered in purple, glowing boils and cancerous growths, as it heavily heaved out of a dripping mouth. This is the Mimic. Allow me to demonstrate his abilities. Pomni? Kane pointed at the jester. Please come on the stage. No. Snapping his fingers, Kane teleported the antsy jester next to the Mimic. She screamed in terror, but Kane froze her feet in place with a flick of his wrist. The Mimic crawled forward like a snail towards Pomni, a tar-like hand caressing her face, leaving behind a thin film of black liquid. Ew, 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 ew. She was close to cracking, but after a moment of silence, the mink retreated its approach, leaving Pomni shivering as she stood there. Though the horror wasn't over yet, as the boils on the creature burst, covering it in colorful liquids. And as gross as it looked, the mimic began transforming into another Pomni. The mimic too, now just standing there in the same frightened pose as Pomni, shivering in fear. The only thing visually separating the two was that the colors of the mimic were just ever so slightly darker. Was really only noticeable when they stood next to each other. Kane? Asked the mimic in Pomni's voice. Why did you make me turn into her? I'm scared. Because our dear audience loves it when Pomni suffers. I had a hunch, muttered the mimic. Mimic Pomni then looked at the real Pomni. I'm sorry you had to witness this. Oh, no offense taken. As you can see, the mimic doesn't just take on the appearance of characters, it also takes on their personality, mannerisms, goals, and, you understand. Anyways, to finish this adventure, Kane summoned an empty cage between Pomni and the other Pomni. You need to capture the mimic alive. Without further ado, Kane clapped his hands, teleporting the mimic and Pomni outside of the circus tent. While also finding Pomni and saving her! Have fun! And with that, the adventure was thoroughly introduced. Kane teleported away, leaving only the echo of his aggressive laughter. Well, obviously we should stick together, said Ragatha, eager to take control of the situation. Nah, said Jax as he carelessly put his hands behind the back of his head. What? Why? Because. Because what, Jax? Just because. He tilted his head. And besides, I'm pretty sure Kane expected that. Or maybe the mimic does. I, for one, don't care. And with that, Jax walked away from the group. Looking from the leaving Jax back to Ragatha, you sighed. I think he's right, you stuttered. Come on, not you too. But you raised a finger as you explained. I think we should let Pomni catch the mimic. mean, who better to catch the thing than the person the mimic is currently copying? Yeah, but it's Pomni, retorted Ragatha. Yeah, you're right. You tapped your fingers together. How are we supposed to find both? At a manageable speed? Without going absolutely crazy! Shouted Kinger. Ragatha sighed in defeat. Gangle, Zubel, pack me up on this, please. I don't care. In fact, I don't care about this adventure. I'm going to take a bath. Groaned the take-apart toy, and that's when you raised a hand. And I think it would be best to just completely remove myself from this scenario. If you see me walking around, it's not me. Simple as that. Gangle, what about you? The tragedy mask wrapped herself around Ragatha's leg. I'm scared. Okay then, I'm just gonna search with Gangle. This was... Okay then, I'm just gonna search with Gangle then. This way you can trust both of us should you encounter us, Kinger. The doorwoman narrowed her eyes. Just promise me you don't let the thing transform into you. What? I would never! Come to think of it, it wouldn't be bad for the mimic to turn into Kinger, as ironic as this sounded. The chess piece may be the best anti-mimic weapon the characters truly had, making him the most important piece on the board. Hilarious. Jax was leisurely walking towards the lake. Sure, the water was static, yet you could still swim in it. He sighed as he threw down a large beach towel on the grass around the lake. Lying down, he sighed. Jax was the type of person who enjoyed the small things in life, such as this, being lazy during an adventure. And if it came to the detriment of the others, that just increased the amount of fun he had. Jax yawned, when suddenly his ears perked up. He opened one eye, looking into the direction of the noise. With her hands folded together, hunched over, looking around afraid, approached Pomni. Jax? Are you the real one? Not the mimic? He shrugged. Yeah. How do I know that? Again, he shrugged. If the thing copies our thoughts and desires and personality, you'll never know. How do I know you're the real Pomni? Anxious, the jester scratched the back of her head. I don't know what to say. Exactly. So what? He closed his eyes again, stretching himself. If you're the real Pomni, the others will capture the real mimic. And if not, I'll just keep you around and capture you myself when I feel like it. Jax yawned. Nevertheless, I'm positive this adventure is another fluke, he thought. That's good to know, chuckled Pomni painfully, before sitting down next to him. You know, Jax, I kinda always admired you. Uh-huh. I mean it. You're always so relaxed and you don't take anything serious. I guess it's really cool. Well, he scratched over his chest proudly. Your choice of man is clearly superb then, Pomni. Boldly, the gesture took hold of Jax's left hand. And the bunny sighed. Just, Pomni, that's important. Don't get too attached, alright? Though just as he said that, the jester jumped on top of his lap, making him look at the girl wide-eyed. She leaned forward, rubbing his cheek with her other hand. "But I mean it. You're quite the catch for a silly little bunny." Without warning, Pomni forced her lips onto Jax's, her hand squeezing his. Jax squirmed beneath the jester, but she was surprisingly strong. Only a second after Pomni forced her tongue into Jax's mouth, her sweet salvia began tasting absolutely revolting, like melted licorice, and not the tasty red kind, the disgusting black kind. And he watched as Pomni's crazed eyes slowly turned into the same yellow of his, while the sludge sealed his mouth shut. With a smug grin, the mimic got up on his feet. His body stretched and changed to be like that of the bunny man. The mimic licked his lips, while Jax tried to open his glued-shut mouth with both hands. And surprised, the mimic looked at the bunny man. "Oh my. So that's what you meant with 'don't get too attached,' Pomni?" Surprised, the bunny looked up at the mimic, and he smirked smugly. "Remember, I know now what you know. And I feel what you feel." And I admit, after only knowing Pomni's scaredy catness, I really don't want to go back to that. Your confidence is truly mesmerizing, Jax. Angrily, Jax reached up to punch the smug mimic, but he just dodged it, before spitting onto the rabbit's foot. "That should give me a minute or two. See ya." Mockingly, the mimic waved at Jax before running off, as the slime on the bunny's foot got harder, pinning Jax in place. It was hours later. You had decided, rather than doing a stupid adventure, you would figure out the mattress situation, as selfish as it was. This was some much-needed me time, and you usually didn't get that. With your arms, you pushed into the bedsheets, your arms sinking so deep into the soft fluff that you almost fell forward. In the digital circus, you turned into a clown-like figure, mostly human-looking too. You had paper-white skin and a painted-on red smile. Big eyes that had black stars painted around them. And you wore pink, slightly revealing clown dresses. Your hands were big, silly cartoon gloves. And no, you weren't wearing them, they quite literally were the skin of your hands. A small hole was at the tip of your right thumb, through which you could blow to inflate certain body parts of yours. All you needed to do was focus on the specific section and it magically would inflate as you blew. Your nose usually being a dead giveaway if you enhanced your body a little, as it was always the first thing to inflate, turning into a big red bulbous shape. Your hair was long and colored in a very soft pink, and you usually wore it in pigtails. It smelled and tasted like cotton candy. Luckily, it didn't dissolve like cotton candy in water, too. Your name in this world was Butter. Butter the Clown. And there had been some silly names Kane had attempted to give you, with Butter being the only coherent and or uncensored one. So, how did you try to make your bed a little more firm? First, you tried placing books on top of the slated frame. When that didn't work, you threw the mattress off the bed and onto the ground. That luckily worked out a little bit, but it was still unbearable. After lying on it for like 5 minutes, you had sunk so deep that your butt felt as if it was lying on the hard ground itself. So, that may be an option, but suboptimal. Your next idea was putting a bunch of crates under your bed, when you heard a knocking on your door. Heart skipping a beat, you approached it, opening the door only a tiny bit. Yeah? It was Jax. He stood there, casually. Yo. Is the adventure over? You asked cautiously. It is. Ragatha back that slime ball. You sighed. I know she could do it. Placing a hand on your chest in relief. That's good. Yup. But Jack stretched himself. A close encounter with the mimic made me realize something. Close encounter? Yeah, may I come in? You blinked, staring at your mattress. It was still on the floor. Your bed half taken apart, with like 2 crates under it. You still weren't done, of course. You scratched the back of your head shyly. It's a bit of a mess. Come on, Butter. Not like I care. Well, that is true. Rolling your eyes, you let the bunny man inside. So, you said as he sat down on your mattress, looking up at Jax. He blinked as he looked down at you. Forcing his gaze away, he blushed and muttered. Well, the mimic tried to transform into me, and it threatened to reveal a secret of mine. Secret? Biting his lower lip, Jax placed his hands on your shoulders, his hands gripping a little tight as he looked right into your eyes. I'll be straightforward. I have a crush on you, he said flat out. Your right eye twitched as your little heart pounded. Crush on me? Without really intending it, your pupils turned to hearts out of sheer embarrassment. You blushed. What are you saying, Jax? What are you saying, Jax? I'm saying that I'd love to spend some quality time with you because you mean a lot to me. Was this even possible? Finding love as your digital self in the digital hell that was the digital circus? Dare you say digital love? You never thought of Jax like this before, but then again, you not only were a shy, hopeless romantic, but also he kinda was the only real option for a romantic get-together. And so, you allowed yourself to be pushed down into the soft floof that was your mattress. Jax climbed on top of you. You could feel his weight and his warm body pressed down on you. You gasped at his sudden roughness, but you accepted it. Jax's face came closer, and then your lips touched. First only gently, as if to ask for permission. And since you didn't resist, the bunny man now came full force down on you. His lips pressing against yours, his tongue already pushing against your lips. You gasped, moaned and groaned as his hand sunk deep into the soft, inflated flesh of your chest. his eyes turning into lewd swirls, and your tongues met. You felt his sweet carrot cake tasting salvia gently slide down your throat. Without breaking lip contact, he grabbed you by your hip, raising your body up so you could undo your dress. He was sweating, so eager he was to see you naked. But just as he had pulled your dress down to your navel, the door to your room was kicked open by another Jax. "Get away from her, you beep!" shouted Jax, and immediately you blushed. "Wait, what?" You looked at the Jax that was on top of you, and he just shrugged. I can explain." Your gaze shifted from the Jax who just entered to the Jax you had been making out with. No, I think I get the picture." "Really?" asked the one on top of you, confused. "That'll be something new," chuckled the other. Yeah, ha, laugh it off." You looked at the intruder Jax. "You're the real one. Probably got taken by surprise by the mimic Jax." Jax blushed, thinking of the encounter with the fake Pomni. "And you are the mimic," you said as you angrily poked a finger into the mimic's chest. "Because why else would this have been such an awesome moment?" "Wait, you actually liked it?" asked the mimic with a smirk. "Of course I did. You massaged my babies," you said as you wiggled your chest a little, before puffing up your cheeks. "Well, if you figured out that much, you probably also realized the reason as to why the mimic beelined to you." "Well, obviously, Jax, you have a crush on me. And when the mimic turned into you, he developed a crush on me too." The mimic nodded. "Pretty much. She's smart, Jax. You have a good taste in women." Jax shrugged. Well, not to toot my own horn here, but you're pretty smart." But what now?" Jax sounded hopeful in a way which made you blush even more. "Well, it's obvious what you want. And well, I'm just gonna say it. Obviously, you two are going to double team me." The short silence felt like hours, but it was only a few seconds until Mimic Jax said, "Come on, Jax, you're thinking it too." "Yeah, I admit it. I am thinking it." Mimic Jax nodded. "So?" But the Mimic didn't need to say anything else, as the real Jax was already opening the buttons of his overall suspenders. "Just so you know, Butter, as an NPC, I don't get tired." Kicking off his clothes, the real Jax appeared next to the Mimic. He too looked down at you. "Yeah, and as a digital character, neither do I." You grinned from ear to ear as you watched the two bicker at each other. Just, other Jax, I have a question. After the first round, can you turn into her? The Mimic looked down at your blushing self. I mean, you don't need my consent. But that won't be an issue, you said with the most lewd grin you could possibly produce. Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive. Special thanks to the channel members Melofia, Miss Hayfield, Muffin, Nico Barlow, Hella, Nexerist, AJ Anime Girl 85, and Hopeful. Your support is very greatly appreciated.